Good afternoon. The situation at petrol pumps across much of Britain seems to be getting better. Figures from the Petrol Retailers Association show more than two-thirds of sites they contacted now have plenty of fuel. However, some filling stations in London and the South East remain dry. The military is due to help out, beginning deliveries to petrol stations from Monday. Our business correspondent Katie Austin has the very latest.
There were more queues to fill up this morning. This was in South East London.
This is the first time I'm queuing up because my boy normally gets it for me. But today, oh my gosh, it's like Christmas came early.
These drivers in Newcastle, though, weren't having issues.
No problems at all. I've just put £100 in the van to keep us going for the week.
Well, a few days ago it was very hard, but I think it's starting to pick up a little bit now, you know.
The body representing independent forecourts says availability across the country has improved. It thinks about two-thirds of sites now have petrol and diesel, while 16% have run dry. But it has labelled the situation in London and the South East as critical.
The prioritisation, all deliveries must now go to London and the South East and to the independent forecourts, which make up 65% of all forecourts across the UK.
200 military personnel, including 100 drivers, have been called in to help boost supplies. They're being trained and will start on Monday.
The first big amount will be really working through this weekend, deploying in Monday, probably on their own more, and then by the end of the week, another 60, 70 will come online.
Amid a shortage of HGV drivers across the economy, 5,000 visas for foreign workers had already been announced, lasting until Christmas Eve. That includes 300 fuel tanker drivers. Now we know they will be able to start immediately, and the length of time they can stay for has been extended until the end of March. 4,700 of the visas are for food lorry drivers. They won't be able to start until later this month, but the length of their stay has also been extended until up to the end of February. Ministers insist the fuel situation will continue to improve if people only buy what they need. Even when supply levels return to normal, motorists are being told they should expect to pay more at the pump as wholesale prices rise. Katie Austin, BBC News.
Well, our political correspondent Chris Mason is in Manchester, where the Conservative Party conference will begin tomorrow. Chris, do you think delegates will think this fuel crisis is under control? Boris Johnson is on top of it, or could it be a real headache for him at conference?
Evening to you, Clive. There's a real bullishness within government tonight. They see this, the Prime Minister sees this through the prism of Brexit and what he interprets as a demand not just for lower immigration, but also for higher wages, and that these are the bumps of a transition in the economy between a low-wage economy, as he sees it, and a higher-wage economy. But what is the lever? What is the lever that the government has cranked to try and alleviate the short-term pressures here? It's the lever of immigration, with a relaxation of visa restrictions to allow more foreign-based drivers to come into the country. The backdrop for this conference, that pressure on fuel, but also a spiralling cost of living question that's being asked by many, including by many Conservatives, and that overhanging this conference at just the point that we're seeing prices going up, and also the end of the furlough scheme, plus the end of the uplift to universal credit. So big questions and big pressures on the government as Conservatives gather here. The Prime Minister expected here in a bit.
OK, Chris, thank you. Chris Mason there in Manchester. The government's latest coronavirus figures show there were 30,301 new infections recorded in the latest 24-hour period, which means on average there were 34,855 new cases recorded per day in the last week. 121 deaths were reported. That's of people who died within 28 days of a positive COVID-19 test. On average, in the past week, 114 deaths were announced every day. The latest figures on those being treated in hospital and the percentage of people who've been vaccinated haven't yet been made available. Climate negotiators from around the world have been holding talks in Italy ahead of the crucial environmental summit known as COP26 in Glasgow next month. The meeting in Milan with delegates from around 50 countries is one of the final opportunities to shape the agenda for Glasgow. From Italy, here's our environment correspondent, Victoria Gill.
Frustration on the streets. as young activists marched to the Milan Climate Conference on Friday.
This is our future, and we have to fight for our future.
So no matter what.
Inside the conference today, a mood of quiet formality as negotiators brought this meeting to a close. What's being discussed, though, could hardly be more urgent.
Fires and floods, and melting of the ice, and rising of the sea, and turmoil among populations.
The overall message from leaders here is one of cautious optimism, that it will be possible to reach a decisive climate. Vulnerable and small island nations are really concerned that we're still a long way from the trajectory of keeping global temperature increase this century to within this key threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius.
We're already at a 1.1 world. We're facing increasing frequency of and severity of storms and flooding. A 1.5 world is very scary to think about, especially for islands like us. And what's even scarier is that we're still not there in terms of ambition, in terms of cutting down emissions.
This vast coal mine in Odisha in India, a country that still depends heavily on coal for energy, is just a glimpse of what a challenge it is to slash carbon emissions. But leaders here agree that meeting that challenge is now urgent.
By 2030, we need to reduce emissions globally by 45%. But what we need is everyone to come forward. And if there is a gap, we're going to have to set out how we will close this gap in this decisive decade.
The true test, bringing the politics in line with the science, will be at the critical UN Climate Conference in just 1 month's time. Victoria Gill, BBC News, Milan.
The supermarket chain Morrisons has been bought at auction by a US private equity firm. If approved by shareholders Clayton, de Billier and Rice, which is advised by the former Tesco boss Sir Terry Leahy, will pay almost £7 billion. The Queen has been addressing MSPs at Holyrood to mark the opening of the 6th session of the Scottish Parliament. This will be the SNP's 4th consecutive term in government following their election victory in May. Alexandra Mackenzie has the story.
The Queen was joined at Holyrood by the Duke and Duchess of Rothesay. They were greeted by party leaders, including the First Minister. MSPs looked on as the mace and the crown of Scotland were placed in the chamber, symbolising the challenges of this parliamentary term.
Marking this new session does indeed bring a sense of beginning and renewal. The Scottish Parliament has been at the heart of Scotland's response to the pandemic, with people across this country looking to you for leadership and stewardship.
Due to the pandemic, much of the music was recorded around the country. Here in Plockton, and this group of asylum-seeking and refugee musicians in Nicola Sturgeon's Glasgow constituency.
We are a nation proud to call itself simply home for everyone who chooses to live here. And it is indeed fitting that the growing diversity of modern Scotland is now reflected more clearly in this new Parliament.
The Queen spoke of fond memories of time spent in Scotland with her late husband, the Duke of Edinburgh. She also said it was a moment to look to a new generation. Alexandra Mackenzie, BBC News.
Europe's first mission to the planet Mercury has sent back its first picture of the planet. The Bepi Colombo spacecraft came within 125 miles of Mercury's crater-covered surface. It's moving too fast to go into orbit, but will begin more detailed observations in 4 years' time. Now, there were 6 games played in the Premier League today, with Chelsea moving back to the top of the table with a 3-1 win at home to Southampton. In the lunchtime kick-off, Man United hosted Everton at Old Trafford. Nesta McGregor has a story from there.
Old Trafford and 70,000 expectant fans. Optimistic for the future due to the present form of a legend from the past. Although Cristiano Ronaldo started on the bench. The away side came closest to opening the scoring. Demarai Gray showing acceleration and speed. Olympic champion Usain Bolt seemed impressed by. The game's first goal, step forward Anthony Martial. 1-0 to Manchester United. Playing in place of Ronaldo. 1-0 at half-time, and shortly after, on came the man everyone was there to see. The Portuguese striker is well known for his trademark goal celebration. The good news, United fans got to see it. The bad news, it came from Everton's Andros Townsend. 5 minutes from the end, the visitors thought they'd won the game, but VAR ruled Yerry Mina was offside. At the final whistle, a point each, but one team clearly happier with that result. Nesta McGregor, BBC News.
That's it. There's more throughout the evening on the BBC News channel, and I'll be back with the late news at 10:15. Now on BBC One. Time for the news where you are. Bye for now.